Thank you for having me. Okay. So let's just get our minds ready for being here. When none of us are beginners, so just go for refuge, generating as much as you can. Renunciation, bodhicitta, wisdom realizing emptiness, remembering the causes of refuge, fear of one's own suffering in the lower realms, all of cyclic existence, and how all other sentient beings are in the same position as us, just like me, and generate that sense of compassion for them. And then in reliance on the three jewels, knowing, having faith that they, having attained the results that we seek, can liberate us. Remembering with your bodhicitta aspect that the prime aspiration is for the welfare of all sentient beings. That drives our actions, common actions, sitting, eating, driving, whatever we do, but being here today, of course, the welfare of all sentient beings, whatever we do with our body, speech, and mind. May we be able to attain enlightenment for their benefit, to bring them from the state of suffering to enlightenment. So that's our driving force. And so we can just reflect for a moment. Do I have any physical or mental suffering right now? What about subtle suffering? Is there this constant background noise, this hum of dissatisfaction? The complaining mind? Wanting slight improvements? There's always something not quite right. in samsara. Even our relationships, we set out, even on the wedding day, thinking how they're permanent, lasting. But it's also uncertain. And can even sadly turn violent and cruel. So whatever it is, our friendships, our jobs, our wealth, our health, whatever place we find ourselves in, everything is subject to change within a single moment. We go to sleep at night, never really sure of waking up. We may leave the house in the morning. It's not definite that we will return. We live within the uncertainty of cyclic existence with just no guarantee. The Buddhas and Bodhisattvas and so forth have encouraged us to see samsara as like one big burning house. Imagine ourselves being inside that giant burning house, along with all the other sentient beings around us. Imagine the intensity of the wish to get out. The fear and terror of our own suffering. And the unimaginable sufferings of those around us. If we had a sense of renunciation, this is how we would feel all the time, this sense of urgency to get out of samsara. Attain liberation, best enlightenment. And so check up. What stops me from having that mind of definite emergence? That mind, I should say, to turn our backs on samsara and attain freedom. What stops us? What limitations are we imposing on ourselves? Do we believe it's possible? Do we procrastinate? Or perhaps we're lazy, inconsistent? Or are we satisfied? We decorate everything around us to feel so warm and homely. Imbue everything with love. Have a good, kind heart, and so we have loving friends and family. Perhaps we're a little too comfortable. Perhaps we either don't accept future lives. This could be a limitation for us. Perhaps we think we'll always take a human life with the same conditions we enjoy now. When things are going well, sometimes we can just think, it's all good, I'm okay. And we're not motivated to even seek out liberation. And if things are going not so well, perhaps we fall in a heap, immobile, paralyzed, unable to think of anything other than what we're currently experiencing. Lama Tsongkhapa says, that if we don't think hard about the drawbacks of suffering, the 3 types, the 6, the 8, if one doesn't think hard about the origins, the source of suffering, the gateway to samsara, common afflictions, then one cannot properly know eradication of samsara. And so he implores us to be moved, to renounce this existence, become weary of it, and to cherish the knowledge of what binds us to samsara, because it can be overcome. We can overcome it. We have Buddha nature. We have seeds already for love, compassion, the good heart. We have this already. We have inner wisdom. Precious human rebirth. Complete with all the inner and outer conditions needed. This most amazing body can be used to attain enlightenment even within one lifetime. It blows my mind to think that some bodhisattvas in some of the pure realms where they cannot get enlightened make prayers to attain the very body that we have right now. We have all the external conditions, having met Guru Shakyamuni Buddha's teachings on Sutra and Tantra. Tantra being rarer than even Buddhas in this world. We have Dharma Centers, Dharma companions to inspire us and encourage us. There is nothing missing. There are no limitations. And the results, if we make effort, are so inconceivable right now. But if the causes and conditions are in place, the result will arise, cannot not arise. And so with that in mind, let's create some of those causes and conditions now together. And I thought to use the chat in Zoom for in a good way. So rather than being a distraction that just comes in at random times, use the Zoom chat now. And I'm asking you to type in a word, maybe single word, and enter, or lots of other single words, but not sentences, just single words. Throw at me in the chat. What words come to mind, single words that come to mind when you think or hear of the word suffering? Type them in the chat for us, please. Keep going, Shayla. Yeah, everyone just chuck it all in so we can see where we're at. Okay, so we've got a good collection happening there. Let's have a look. We've got pain, transcendence, fear, inevitable, longing, sorrow, sadness, anger, optional, lies, anguish, me, and darling Erin, totally. Wrong understanding, daily life, discomfort, anger, opportunity, pain, hurt, anger, sadness, wanting, dissatisfaction, fear, destruction, attachment. Yeah, absolutely. Wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. So wonderful. It's like that. And that just shows where you guys are at, and the variance amongst your thoughts as you continue to type as well. Because, you know, how often do we try to like gloss over even the word suffering? Some translators don't even use the word suffering, right? Because we're just so tender, we can't handle the word suffering. Same with fear, as far as refuge goes. We have to dress it up: useful fear, intelligent fear, healthy fear. We can't possibly just call it fear, you know? So often for a lot of us, when we do think of suffering, we do think of, you know, defeated and hopelessness and frustration and pain and alone and weighed down, and, you know, all of these sort of like attachment and anger and all of these anguish, you know, all of these longing, sadness, you know, it's all of that sort of stuff, right? And then I see other words in there like inevitable, transcendence, optional, daily life. I'm not sure about that one. I probably should exclude that one from my current thought. Opportunity. Burning's a good one. Compassion. So there's a lot of positive words that come out from even that one word, suffering. So that shows it's not inherently bad, is it? Because otherwise only would we have, you know, painful mind responding to that word. We'd all agree, and if it was inherently existent suffering, we'd all agree that it is like this, however we presented it. But even within that chat, there's so much variation. So do you guys know how to use the, let me see, the reactions? Do you know how to use the reactions? So give me a thumbs up symbol if you agree with the following statement. Focusing or meditating on suffering and its causes only makes me feel more depressed, apathetic, unmotivated, or even paralyzed or worthless, something along those lines. Did anyone do a thumbs up? Oh, this is so amazing. Either you guys don't know how to use it, you tricked me. Oh, that's awesome. So a lot of people, wow, I'm super impressed, because I would expect, like Billy, as you did, I would expect a lot of people would actually feel a sense of, oh, come on, do we really have to do this? Buddhists in their suffering, all they talk about is suffering, so depressing. It's morbid, it's bleak. Get out and live your life, go to the beach, So Billy, why did you, you may not like to share, and I'm not going to urge you to share either if you wish not to. If you'd like to, why did you do a thumbs up?
That I don't disagree with suffering. Well, keep in mind, I'm new to all this. I don't know, I tend to be a positive person and focus on positive outcomes. I tend to spiral out when I focus on suffering, both for myself and others.
Yeah, that's good. So you generally have a positive frame of mind and you like to keep that positive frame of mind. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yes.
Yeah, that's excellent, because that's often what I'm hearing in other Dharma circles and stuff as well, is this sense of, I've got to protect my mind. I only want to experience, happiness and good thoughts and live in accord with that. So I have to actually shut out, and even sometimes for my own protection, shut out these negative situations, negative thoughts. I can't watch the news anymore. That sort of mentality. Is that something you could relate to in some ways, Billy, to some degree?
Very much so.
Yeah, fantastic. So that's where I think some people have some resistance to Buddhism. And it's a great place you're coming from. The difficulty with that, if we don't engage in the Buddhist philosophy and try to understand suffering and understand its causes, then we cannot overcome them. And this is the difference, is from a Buddhist perspective, we don't hold to just one lifetime. So it's like that has to be investigated really on your own for now, and research widely, investigate, analyze, check up, look at different cultures who have different, many different cultures across time have the same assertion of past lives, future lives existing, and verified individual accounts, so check up as much as you can on that, because if you can come closer to understanding that there is a past life and a future life based on even reasoning of, having this consciousness, which is changing moment to moment, it's impermanent, it's formless, it doesn't have form, it's not something that appears to have, like have shape and color appearing to an eye consciousness. It's formless. It cannot be destroyed. So our consciousness is going to go on endlessly without able to be destroyed. So we're always going to have a consciousness. Because it is consciousness, we also had a previous moment of mind that gave rise to the result of this present mind. This present mind now gives rise to this next moment of mind. And so in meditation, with lots of research, all that sort of stuff, using reasons and logic, using as examples and meditation, going back to your earlier moments, seeing how they were dependent on previous moments, going back, you might get back to when you were 3 and early memories, and then they are a result. So therefore they had a cause. So what was their cause? An earlier moment in time you can remember, and go back into the womb and so forth. And then at some point you can even extrapolate, because we're going to not be able to remember, right? You can extrapolate, based on reasons and logic, that because it is consciousness, because it is momentary, it gives rise to a new moment. Because it's impermanent, it's caused, like this. It is a result, so it has a cause. What is the cause? It can only be something that is compatible with it and a substantial cause to transform into it, and that can only be of the same nature consciousness. So that's a whole separate topic. But the more we can develop our own conviction, or at least, like, let's, for the sake of understanding, just assume that they exist. They haven't been refuted, okay? So let's just assume. What harm would come if I was to assume? And see, it really opens up. That's kind of like a basic underlying assumption in Buddhism. So because we have this consciousness, this mind that is beginningless and endless, it's not just this one lifetime. So things might be quite comfortable for us now, and we might feel a sense of protection to keep everything nice and not let negative thoughts come in, so that we don't spiral out of control, spiral downwards. What use are we to people when we've spiraled, right? So we need to protect. But the thing is, because we have past and future lives, this consciousness is going to go on, and it's not definite what type of rebirth we're going to take, because it's not about choice. It's not about prayer. We're under the control of karma and affliction. So, within any moment, the breath could cease. We could have a heart attack sitting here right now, okay, before we even get to leave meeting. Someone could come in and harm us, So all of these sorts of things. So the more we can think about future lives, the more we can focus on the Dharma in a way to take its essence and see that suffering has a cause. Suffering is a result. It has a cause. So then we can investigate, well, what are the causes of my suffering? And then, because it has a cause, if we can stop the cause, we stop it producing its result. We stop the cause of suffering, we stop the result of suffering. So in that sense, there's a great purpose in reflecting on suffering. It has great meaning, and it's not to collapse into despair. It's not to be negative and paralyzed, immobile through our suffering, right? So it's actually for a very great meaning to overcome our suffering. And more than that, because we have compassion already for sentient beings, and we want to grow that compassion, meditate on that compassion, transform that seed of compassion and love we have right now to become great love, great compassion, so that we can free all others from their suffering and causes of suffering. Does that make a bit of sense, Billy?
It does, very much so. Thank you.
Brilliant. You're welcome. Jonathan's got something here. But there is nothing that is eternal. Okay. All right. So, so therefore, hang in there and guard your own mind, and, protect your own mind, go within your own limits. So we've got to know our limits as well when we talk about suffering. I had someone who was quite triggered on the weekend course that I did here at CI. A lot of people get triggered by, the kindness of the mother, for instance. So I knew that, and I preempted that, and I didn't even go beyond the kindness of the mother and giving us this body by which we can use it as the basis for having a precious human rebirth, taking vows and all that sort of stuff. And even just with just that, this person was greatly triggered. So we have to know what our limits are and what we can handle in our discovery of true suffering and its causes and so forth. So just know your limit, know what you can do. And if you need to leave the meeting and watch this later in your own time on the video, then by all means. But that's just, just a word of caution, just to stay within your limits. The other thing is, when we look at suffering, quite often we think of suffering, this suffering of pain. And naturally, we all have that. Even animals have that wish to be free of suffering. So from a Buddhist perspective, we're broadening our view once again, and we're looking more widely at what also is actually a true suffering. So from a Buddhist perspective, what we call happiness, our temporary happiness, which is fleeting, impermanent, it doesn't last. In fact, if we sit down to have say we're hungry and we sit down to have a great feast, okay, how long before we're like, oh, trying to pull out the pants a bit, feeling a bit stuffed, or loosening the buckle discreetly so no one sees, or if it's with family, you don't care, you just rip the belt off entirely. How long before that pain starts to come and we've eaten too much? And sometimes even the thought of more, which is not the seconds we can always go for, right? But the thirds, the fourths, like, oh no, please just finish the bowl. No, it's just too much. So even what was temporary happiness has changed and become something else. And because of that changing nature into something that, if it was real happiness, true, genuine happiness, the more we had, the happier we'd be. We wouldn't have that change. So from a Buddhist perspective, also that suffering of change, that contaminated happiness, that too is one of the true sufferings. But even more subtle than that is having this body and mind. These aggregates have been propelled from the bardo state into the womb of the mother, the fertilized, the sperm and yolk coming together, so the fertilized ovum, and we've grown this body. So this body and the mind, the consciousness has entered that fertilized ovum, and the body and mind have developed within the womb and so forth. So now we're quite uncontrived with our anger, for instance. We're going down the freeway and someone cuts in front of us, because they want to get the exit. They miss, we're going to miss the exit. So they've cut in front of us. Instantly, that fear and fright comes in, and that anger and rage or something, that, the disrespect or whatever, the abuse we want to yell out. Maybe it's not safe to yell out abuse, I'm not sure. But, they're not going to hear you necessarily, but just whatever. Anyway, so that uncontrived anger just comes in an instant without having to think about all the reasons of why I should be angry with this person right now, and then generating a mind, through effort for anger. It's not like that, right? So we've got this uncontrived anger, uncontrived attachment, because we've practiced it so well over our lifetimes. But what we want to do is make stronger the virtuous states of mind. So having this body and mind under the control of karma and afflictions, it's I think it was Kurti Senshub Rinpoche, he talked about the suffering body and mind, the aggregates, as being like a ticking time bomb. And we may not be experiencing right in this moment, great pain or anything like that, but it only takes a small condition to change, and it can give rise to that pain. A small condition to change in our neutral state of being becomes like this contaminated happiness and so forth. So Kodo's had her hand up. My darling, would you like to add something to what we're saying here? Thank you, Kodo.
I have a question, and you said exactly the setup of my question. When we are hovering above our copulating parents, I have to ask.
Gross.
I've been asking every teacher, because it's not clear yet.
Yeah, I'm not sure it's clear for me either, but go on.
Well, when our mind is ready to pop in to the belly of our mothers, do we, I don't mean consciously choose, but maybe it is that, do we choose these parents in this family because we know we're going to learn a whole load of XYZ from them, or is it just happenstance that we just take anybody who's ready?
That's right. It's, we're looking for a place to be born, and some places are off-site, but some where there's karma, it is an open possibility. And so you and anyone else around you in that bardo state, they say, look, to be truthful, Kodo, I don't really try to understand well this concept, because I just go, there's other things I want to focus on. So I can't say that I understand it well, but it seems that there is attachment to the opposite sex, like the father in my case, and aversion or something to the mother, and then we take rebirth in that, you know. So it seems all a bit too much for me to be able to. I try to stick with what I can understand in a reason and logical way, and some things where I have to accept too much on faith, like I don't necessarily go there. But I think what I've said is correct. But by all means, anything I say should be checked up. You know, don't treat. If the Buddha said check up, then naturally me, someone who's a nothing nobody, you should definitely check up everything I say if it's you know, for accuracy. Yeah, I hope that gives you a little bit of what you were looking for. So it's not a matter. Yeah, so it's not a matter of you chose. We don't have that level of consciousness. We're just driven by our karma, driven by our afflictions, and we take rebirth in that situation. So it won't always be in the womb of a mother. You know, there's other forms of ways we can be reborn, and to different types of species and so forth. All right, thank you.
Thank you.
So if we are planning on getting free of cyclic existence, then we're going to have to find ourselves in that burning house. We have to find that level where we're not going to be seeking contaminated happiness, but seeing our attachment. I think it was Lama Zopa Rinpoche who said, I think it was attachment, to see it as likened to used toilet paper. Kind of gross, right? So right now we're like chasing attachments, yum yum, give me, but he's like, no, see it as used toilet paper. You just want to throw it away. Okay, you wouldn't be using it, would you? Delicious, you know, give me more. It's not like this. So we need to develop that sense of revulsion to cyclic existence, that aversion, instead of pursuing attachments, to turn our backs on attachments, to turn our back on cyclic existence and turn towards liberation, enlightenment. So therefore, you know, to get to that stage, we really need to get in touch with our suffering, to get in touch with our future rebirths and the likelihood of taking another upper realm rebirth. If we can generate, you know, virtuous states of mind and cultivate them so that they're habitual, and at the time of death have a virtuous state of mind, take refuge, no problem, upper realm rebirth. But that's what we have already. And you and me, we have it pretty good.
We do have it very good.
We do. There's many suffering sentient beings who are humans. Not to mention 28,000 of, you know, exactly what we're thinking with the earthquakes, the earthquake in Turkey, Syria, stuff like this, but all around the world, you know, this human rebirth that we have. And this is the challenge, is we have it so goddamn good. I hope I can say that without offending people, but we have it so good, right? So, and that's in some ways is such a blessing. We've created the cause for it. But in other ways, it's a curse, because we can just get so comfortable and not even really think that we're suffering and need to overcome it. Okay? All right. So let's see where the chat. So keep the chat always meaningful, because it is a distraction. So let's see. Where did we get up to? I'm not sure if that's a chat just amongst themselves. It might be. Okay, so all right, so then let's go into Shanti Deva, glorious Shanti Deva. How amazing. We've got to love Shanti Deva, don't we? So we did, I just left you guys to your own device to do refuge bodhicitta, because I figure you guys aren't beginners and all that stuff. So we're looking at true suffering, and then we, you know, I've got here like death, aging, fear, you know, depression, suffering, grief, you know, discomfort, pain, loneliness, sadness. We know suffering quite well, separation. You know, we are quite learned when it comes to what are the 3, the 6, the 8 types of suffering. We already have knowledge of that. So I wasn't going to go through that type of thing. You can easily find that in any of the Lamrim texts as well. I might touch on some of the things because it is important, but I want to look at this. Shanti Deva, I would encourage this to be memorized if possible. I find it very precious to once you've got it memorized, and you can easily reflect on it in meditation, you know, applying it to your situation. So suffering has good qualities, right? So this is from Bodhisattva's Way of Life, through being disheartened with it. So what we can, I'll give you the quote first, and then I might go through and explain it. Through being disheartened with it, arrogance is dispelled. Compassion arises for those in cyclic existence. Negativities are shunned, and joy is found in virtue. So I find this very precious, because when we're suffering, we tend to just think of it as only bad. But no, it's not like that. Suffering has good qualities. As we saw in the group chat at the beginning, the purposeful chat, people were brought in, you know, transcendence and, you know, these sorts of things. So through being disheartened with suffering, then we can develop that mind of renunciation that wants to be free of it, wants to give it up, wants to turn our back on samsara and turn towards liberation, enlightenment. And we talk about self-compassion, but from a Buddhist context, renunciation really is self-compassion. If compassion is wanting to be free of suffering and it's related to oneself, then we want to be free of suffering, which is samsara, our body and mind pervaded by suffering is an illustration of samsara. So we want to be free of that. So if suffering is something that is challenging for us, use it on the path in a way of seeing its good qualities to generate that sense of renunciation. And then even more than renunciation, when we have this self-compassion in that context, wanting to be free of the pervasive suffering of conditionality, that third type, the most subtle type, to get to that point, we have to focus on being free of the suffering of change, which is less subtle, and then even something quite gross with the suffering of suffering, all that pain. So to be wanting to be free of the pain and even the contaminated pleasure, and then even to be free of, and even non-Buddhists want to be, animals want to be free of suffering, even non-Buddhists want to be free of suffering of change. So that's why they attain, you know, say the fourth concentration of the form realm or formless realm. You know, there's no suffering of change in those realms. So even non-Buddhists wish to be free of that. But from a Buddhist point of view, we want to be free of this pervasive suffering of conditionality, because whether we're born in the highest realm, peak of existence, or the lowest, hottest hell, we're pervaded by a body and mind, or at least a mind. If we're in the formless realm, we're pervaded by having suffering, this third type, which gives rise to the first and second types. So self-compassion, and then we turn our mind to others who, just like me, are experiencing suffering and just like me wish for happiness. And so compassion arises. Already, I think we would wish people to be free of the suffering of pain, friend, enemy, stranger, okay, because we have a good heart. But do we wish them to be free of the suffering of change? That's a hard one, right? Do we wish them to be free of that temporary happiness? And do we wish for them to be free of having a body and mind controlled by karma and delusions? That one feels a little more easier than the suffering of change, wanting them to be free of temporary happiness. But if we want them to be free of temporary happiness, it's because we know it is not real, genuine happiness, and we would rather them have that. So therefore, we naturally want them to be free of the contaminated happiness so that they can be liberated and have genuine happiness. We also know that craving and attachment for whatever happiness they've got, the clinging, the possessiveness, and so forth, it just increases their suffering. It increases these mental afflictions to create new rounds of cyclic existence. So also like that, we can wish that they be free of contaminated happiness. So it's got a very particular purpose. It's not that we don't want them to be happy. It's not like that at all. You can see where I'm coming from. So yeah, that was something I struggled with in meditation on the 4 immeasurables. You know, how do I get past this, wanting them to be free of the suffering of change? And so like that. So disheartened, renunciation, and turning our mind to others, compassion. When we are suffering, it's very hard to walk around arrogant and full of pride. And I love the Tibetan word ngagyal, I think it is, which is like I king. I nga gyal king. I king. I'm king. You know, such a great word to describe pride, thinking oneself the better than others, you know. So that's so precious. When we're suffering, it's very hard to be arrogant. It's very hard to not be humbled by our inability at that time. I know, like, you know, from experience, like before I got really sick, I got shingles, and I had post-nerve damage for about 1.5 years, and I couldn't even peel a potato, and I couldn't even walk up the hill. It was, you know, really very challenging. So before that, I felt, you know, pretty confident and successful at whatever I did, a bit arrogant in some ways, you could say, right? Bit like independent, yeah. So this I-ness, this independence, I'm happy to help, but I don't need to receive help. It's difficult to receive help. It's easier to give it, you know, because you don't want others to be inconvenienced by you and all that sort of stuff. But you know, when we're suffering, when we're vulnerable, we have to let go of that feeling of independence. And we have to come to a place where we connect with others in that interdependence and rely on them for basic help, you know, for groceries or whatever it is. So you know, we can get very much a firsthand experience when we are suffering, of needing to rely on others, and therefore not being with this arrogance, but making us humble in accepting help, allowing others to help, seeing it, getting past that, seeing it as an inconvenience, but seeing that you're actually giving someone the opportunity to help. Just as we love to help others, but we're not going to deny someone else the opportunity to help us. So we have to sort of turn our mind around, and you know, our heart can go out to others in a more relatable way. So and then, you know, we can also learn from suffering, you know, in the sense that when we are suffering, we definitely do not want others to experience that suffering. So we know how painful it is. We know our situation. And with shingles, for instance, I had it to the head, from the front there to the back on just one side it goes. But if it goes to the eye, it can make you blind. And so, you know, particularly like elderly people, it's the last thing you would wish for anyone vulnerable to have. The only word I used to describe it was excruciating pain. So, you know, this compassion, this even Tonglen, you know, our Buddhist practices support us so beautifully. And then because I had created the cause for this suffering, it's naturally come out of non-virtue. So then the next one Shanti Deva talks about is negativities are shunned. If I don't want this suffering result, well, we all know about karma, right? We've necessarily created the cause. So what was the cause? We're not going to be able to identify it exactly, but from a group, we know that non-virtue gives rise to suffering. Virtue gives rise to happiness. So therefore we can shun negativities because we don't wish for more of that suffering. And karma never going to waste. It might have been from a karma from long ago as to why we're experiencing it. Identifying the exact cause is not important for us, and it's not until we're really a Buddha that we can know the subtleties of karma. And then the opposite, because we do want happiness, we want increased happiness, we want freedom from suffering, then we delight. We generate this joy in creating virtue. So we can also see our suffering, other good qualities, we can see it as purification. I know many of us have been on retreat with Rinpoche, and we've seen, you know, everyone around us getting sick. So many people get sick, right? Light of the path and everything. And it's kind of like some of us, we even go, oh, I'm not sick. I mustn't be purifying. You know, we get a bit jealous of those that are sick because they're experiencing purification right now. Not only we accumulate merit, but we actually need, as far as accumulating merit, it's not enough. We need to purify negativities. You know, Sangye, to become Buddha, we need purification of the obscurations and everything. We need to develop all the realizations and dependence on our accumulation. So like that. So suffering, we can have a really healthy mind, a beneficial mind by recognizing its good qualities and even adding to that, forcefully going for refuge. So not just suffering, not just suffering of pain, that's just the illustration I give you, but broadening that suffering of change, pervasive suffering of conditionality, seeing how we're all suffering within cyclic existence. And, you know, no qualities, I think they say something like this, no qualities grow in the high mountain tops, it's all in the valleys below. So, you know, having that pride is not going to get us where we need. We need to have that humble mind with respect to the Dharma and the teachers and sentient beings and everything. So, you know, applying this suffering to the third, pervasive suffering of conditionality, and generating that sense of compassion, self-compassion, compassion for others, great compassion, and then go along the path to stop creating causes for lower realms. Stop creating causes even for upper realms. Okay, so stop non-virtues, lower realms, stop even contaminated virtues for the upper realms, and generate, you know, this joy that delights in cultivating virtuous, holy minds, Dharma minds. Okay, let's see what the chat's getting us to do. Concept freedom from attention. Is this a question for me, Corey? Or are you questioning everyone? Can we just clarify what the use of the chat is right now?
These were all notes taken from the discussion where you've been sharing various information, and I was just thinking about attachment theory related to compassion, and I'm seeing a lot of integration between like attachment theory and psychology into some of the
right.
talking about. So I just, if people are offering,
right, you're just joining the dots and everything as well, broadening, relating it to your experience and everything. Good.
Mhm.
Yeah. Okay, so, and then I did want to give one other quote from Shanti Deva, because this one also I find worth memorizing. You know, why be unhappy about something if it can be remedied? You know, we get ourselves so worked up and fight against what is happening to us, and using all our energy in a way that we just exhaust ourselves instead of actually focusing on, you know, if it can be remedied, what do I need to do? So why be unhappy about something if it can be remedied? Get in and do what needs to be done. Don't waste the time and energy, you know, going in a way that's counter, you know, it's not going in the right direction. And what is the use of being unhappy about something if it cannot be remedied? So sometimes we do need to learn to accept suffering. Instead of saying, why am I suffering? In some ways we can say, well, why not? You know, we've created the cause, so why not? Yeah. So does any of this making sense to you guys? Yeah. Okay. Lorna, where is your face? Oh, there you are. Hello, Lorna. I like to look at the people when they're talking so I can relate. Yeah. Thank you, Lorna.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense for me because I was going through a really bad period about 5 years ago, and sort of really negative things kept happening to me.
Right.
And I couldn't understand why it was happening. And so I was not only beating myself up thinking I must be, you know, doing something, even though I wasn't.
Yeah.
But and I don't want to get into the circumstances, but at the
That's
same
okay.
time, I was also angry with the people who were harming me. So it was that kind of a situation. And then when I first heard the Dharma and started to listen to it and understand karma, it
Mm.
immediately like just opened up the blue skies for me in terms of I stopped beating myself up because I could
Good.
see that this was something that I had created in past lives, that it
Yes.
wasn't anything I was particularly doing now. And I also stopped hating the people who were harming me because I understood that karmic relationship that I had with them that was ripening, acting itself out now.
Mm.
And it just really actually made a world of difference for me to
Absolutely.
understand that. And it, you know, it didn't necessarily make the situation better, but I just stopped beating myself up and I stopped being angry with everybody that I saw
Really,
as harming me.
yeah, it made your reaction, your response to the situation better. Absolutely better in that sense. Yeah. Thank you, Lorna. That's an excellent example. And that's exactly right. With the Dharma, it's so precious, right? But it holds us responsible. And so unless we're willing to accept responsibility, we can develop a bit of an aversion to it, because while we want to stay stuck in the blame game that it's everyone else's fault why I'm suffering, and not take that personal responsibility, then that's going to always make the Dharma very hard. And it is hard to practice. You know, it's not easy because our natural way of thinking under karma and afflictions is it's your fault that I'm suffering. You are the cause of my suffering because you're abusing me, because you're saying this and that. And you know, that person, when we look around and we look to our friends, they will agree, yes, that person is causing you to suffer.
Yeah.
You know?
But there's
And
no
so,
rhyme or reason to it. At the same time, it still didn't make any sense to me why they were treating me like that.
exactly. And that's why we need to broaden our view
That's
to,
right.
you know, past lives and so forth. Because, yeah, being a good person in this life, we might even be practicing kindness to someone, speaking well to them, doing things that we can within our limit to be helpful, and yet they still don't like us.
Yeah.
So I've got that going on too. You know, we're all in the boat together. And even the Buddha had that, you know, as far as people not liking him. His Holiness the Dalai Lama, for goodness sake, has people not liking him. So of course us ordinary beings. But the thing is, as you rightly identified, you know, our happiness, our suffering is within our own continuum. And coming back to the reasons and logic of it being, you know, we are the creator of our own happiness and suffering, right? So because it's in our own continuum and it's you know, formless, right? It's nothing external having form can be the cause of that. Being the substantial cause can only be from an earlier moment of our mind giving rise to that, creating a seed of anger, creating a seed for discord, creating a seed of disharmony, or, you know, all of these sorts of things. So the outer person and the words they say that, you know, do to our ordinary mind hurt, right? You know, hurt us. These outer external things can never be more than just a condition which ripens the seed within our own continuum. And so, yeah, that's the challenge. And we're so often fooled by our appearances, fooled by our ignorance, fooled by our attachment aversion, that we want to look outward and blame other, because that means we don't have to be accountable to change, or just accountable, you know? So yeah, thank you, Lorna. That's really wonderful sharing that.
I'm not sure I understand.
Don't worry, Siri, you'll get it in the future. Siri didn't understand. She always pipes in when I teach you guys. I don't know why that is.
That's AI for you. They won't understand.
Right. So I think you mentioned, Lorna, last week, Shravasti Abbey, and that's where Sangye Kadro is at the moment. And she's amazing, and we're so learned and everything. I think she teaches even at your center, right? Some classes I'd love to get in on. And she gave a great analogy of the three types of sufferings, and it's quite wonderful because it's like being, stuck in this cycle of problems, this samsara, right? Stuck in a prison. Okay, so that's nothing new. Prison of cyclic existence. We're familiar with that. Where she went further is she's going, like imagine like all the walls of the prison and the bars. This is like our karma and delusions. So it's a nice way of concretizing in this analogy our karma and delusions. We can imagine it's, our shackles and chains if we're that prisoner, in high security or whatever. And these prisoners, sometimes they have really bad experiences, don't they? They get shanked by other prisoners, or, they're in fights and all this sort of stuff. So these terrible experiences that they experience, that when we put ourselves in the analogy, right? Yeah. So if we were in that prisoner cycle of existence as the prisoner, and we're getting, shanked and whatever else, then these are the sufferings of sufferings. But when we get the call, or the warden comes in or whoever and says, oh, you've got a visit, families come, okay? Oh, the joy arises, the happiness, isn't it? It's like the suffering of change, getting a visitor to come in and see you as a prisoner. And then just that whole not being free to leave the cell or the confines of the prison, not having that freedom at all. That's like being, stuck, confined, pervaded by that experience of suffering. So I really liked the way she elaborated on the common analogy there of prison and related it to the three sufferings. And I think that's, really lovely and worth sharing. So the thing is, we're not to collapse, right, Billy? We're not to get depressed about our situation, because none of this is permanent. Yeah, all of this suffering is impermanent. So the three types we're talking about, it's impermanent, it's changing moment by moment, which means that causes and conditions can impact upon that suffering and change it. Yeah, it's changeable, it's changing moment by moment. So therefore, it can be overcome, because it can be interacted with and changed and counted and lessened, subdued, various antidotes brought in, and even powerful antidotes to destroy it entirely. So this is why we don't fall into a heap, because we see that it's impermanent, that it can be changed. So if it was permanent, we might as well just give up doing whatever we're doing. Let's just leave meeting now and go and do something else, but it's not permanent. And so within that, just like with the Dharma is talking about taking that responsibility, there's a freedom that comes with that. And so we are in the driver's seat. The Buddha can teach the path to liberation, but it's all up to us to actually utilize the Dharma. And sadly, no one can do that for us. Okay. So maybe we haven't got long in this class, have we? Let's just see what else I had in mind. Oh yeah, I wanted to do something else as well. I'll just share sound in case we get to it. Okay, I wasn't going to go through this because I think I went through this last week with you, and some of you guys have seen it. I know, Billy, you haven't. So, when we look at the Four Noble Truths, true suffering, does it have a cause or not have a cause? Does it have a true origin or not a true origin? If it has no cause, then there's nothing we can do about it. We're stuck with it. There's nothing that can change it. It's just an utterly useless situation. Okay? If our true suffering has a true cause, then when we look at exhausting all possibilities of that, it's got to either be an impermanent cause or a permanent cause. If it's permanent, there's nothing we can do to counteract it. Nothing will interact with that and change it. So there's nothing, we'll always be suffering. We might as well just leave meeting. But because it arises, it increases. Sometimes it's not present. Sometimes it is present. We see that it's dependent on cause and conditions when it arises, when it subsides, it fluctuates. We can see that it is impermanent, does change moment by moment, depending on the causes and conditions that we have ourselves in. And so therefore, that's where all the glory lies. Because true origins has a cause, and that cause is primarily the ignorance grasping at ourselves and everything else to inherently exist. And on the basis of that, we generate attachment, aversion, we divide everything into friend, enemy, stranger, protect what we love, and even, get possessive over what we love, cling to it, hold to it, create negative karma. We can counter all of those wrong minds, those wrong consciousnesses, by bringing in the true path, wisdom, realizing emptiness, and so forth, and then attain true cessations. So I won't go into more detail than that unless you have questions in relation to it. But that's something I think I introduced last lesson, and I asked you guys to meditate on. So because I think it, hopefully you guys had some meditation time on that during the week, because I think it is very precious. All right, so just to wrap up the theory side, anything external, there's not so much we can do much about. It's not samsara. Anything external, if it's a person with their own stuff going on, it's their own samsara, so they can only be the ones to overcome that. But if it's the environment or whatever, it's not something that's to be overcome. What we do want to focus on is our own internal suffering. So whatever is in our continuum, any part of our continuum is samsara. So samsara is very individualized to what's within our own continuum. That's what we want to, that's the playground for the practitioner. And the primary example of this is this body and mind under the control of karma and afflictions. Okay? So that's what we seek to be free of. And therefore, I want to have a look at an example of, the 36 impurities. So quite often where we come undone is we generate not only attachment to ourselves, our own body, but obviously to others' bodies. So is someone's microphone on? Can we just mute that? I'm just getting a bit of feedback from the background noise. And then when they want to talk, please just unmute yourself. Thank you. So yeah. Oh, sorry, I got distracted. So attachment, right? So even when we have just attachment to our own body, think of how many hours in a day we spend on just this body, nourishing it, cleaning it, dressing it, exercising it, making it look good so that we can go greet the world and feel good about ourselves and all that. So when we think about how much time is devoted, we're enslaved by this body. And we think how much time we actually have left in this life if we live to a good ripe age. When we take out all those hours in a day dedicated to the body, and then extend that and take out all the other time commitments, you've got work and everything like this, to realize how much time we've got left to actually practice Dharma, you might be shocked to think that it's only a few years. It's kind of scary. So it could be a motivator if we're inclined to procrastination, to motivate us to get on with it. But this body of ours, how much longer? Like I'm 51. So let's say I have the karma to live another 35 years at the most, maybe. So this body inevitably is just going to become a corpse, isn't it? We can't take it. It's like a guest house. We can't take it to the next, and nor would we want to at 85 and all of the, the problems we have. So when we think about the investment of our time, for what purpose? Now, don't misunderstand me, please, because we do need this body. It houses, with it, we have this precious human rebirth from which we can accomplish enlightenment even in a single lifetime. We can accomplish living in morality, having vows. We can use our body helping others and, benefiting not only others but ourselves, right? So this body has so many amazing things to it. So not to not put it to good use. Like I'm saying, put it to good use. Use it for Dharma. Use it to free yourself from cyclic existence and others. But also know how much time we waste on it and how much it can generate attachment and so forth. And so hopefully you're still here, so I didn't offend you too much. But I just think that's so classic. And I think it's from a Dharma point of view, you know, I think that's precious, because it's kind of like we get into so much trouble through attachment to, say, others' bodies, right? And we oh my gosh, I even like the show Catfish. You know, we project all this stuff, you know, the TV show where they haven't even met the person and they're so in love. It's an American show. I can't believe, Credo, you've never seen it. The internet dating, right? Where they get catfished over the internet. They've never even spoken to the person, met them, but they've been doing this, you know, texting relationship for 10 years, so in love with them, all these fantasies we build up in our head. So this attachment, you know, to bodies and to people and so forth. And, you know, really, what is there to be attached to? When you go below the skin, like I actually think Robbie Williams is kind of sexy. Okay, apologies. Shayla agrees with me. Like, yeah, he's totally hot, right? And but when you go below the skin, what do you see? It's kind of like, where is that attachment? Where is that beauty that I'm, you know, not me, but, you know, lusting after, or, you know, whatever, like in pre-nun days, maybe lusting after. Where is that attachment? You know, it's certainly not his skin. If he takes his skin off, puts it on the ground, well, I'm not attracted to his skin anymore, is it? So is it his hair? Well, you know, he rips off the hair and whatever. Am I attracted to his head? Well, no. You know, is it the collection of all his muscles and tendons and all of these things all piled in this massive flesh? This, you know, the body has these 36 impurities, like snot and phlegm and pus, and even just the sound of it, you know, sounds gross. Marrow and hair and nails and semen and all of this sort of stuff, feces, blood. But, you know, when we don't investigate and we just leave things at the level of appearance, then we can get ourselves into so much trouble, and even going so far as to engage in action like sexual misconduct and all of this sort of stuff, you know. So much harm can come about because we mistake these bodies, as we see them as clean, you know, something beautiful and all of this sort of stuff, when they're actually very much not that. Even their very cause has come about due to, you know, fertilized egg, sperm and ovum, right? Fertilized egg of the egg and the sperm of the mother and father, very impure substances. So even from its get-go, it's created out of impure substances. And even in its present state with all these 36 impurities, it's impure. But we decorate and we you know, everything, we try to make everything pure and clean. And I'm not suggesting, middle way, I'm not suggesting throw the baby out with the bathwater and suddenly we just, you know, allow ourselves to just become, you know, all the filth. That won't go down so well in a retreat of 200 people sitting, you know, close to each other. But, you know, just know that how the body exists, and try to, over the next week, recognize how much we invest in this body, how much, you know, time and energy and money and everything like that. And yes, it's a wonderful vehicle to take us into our future lives by developing realizations and the good heart and everything we've got now. But just become aware of the body, become aware of others' bodies and how we perceive them, what arises for us, how we may be getting ourselves into trouble with attachment and so forth. And even do like a meditation on the body. Which part of this body is it that I'm attracted to? And imagine dissecting it like a Robbie Williams style. So that would be my suggestion or encouragement to you guys, and see how you identify with your 5 aggregates. So do I cling to this body, identify with this body in a particular way, you know, giving rise to attachment and all this pride and arrogance and whatever else we have. You know, does it lead me to suffering? You know, that sort of thing. Do I over-identify with my feelings, with my mind, and, you know, like this? Okay, so we'll run out of time, really. So does that seem okay for you guys? if we had more time, we could do more things, but we've run out. So I'd like to do the dedication prayers, if we may. Is there any quick, 90-second question or something, or if we're allowed to go over time, the question can be longer? Do you guys have any questions or anything, guys? Just so that you've got whatever it is you needed, or hopefully some benefit out of today. Kodo?
Yeah, I'm in the US and I've been looking for places to go to do long retreat and eventually shave it all off and become a nun. I'm getting closer and closer and closer, but
Yeah.
I don't know places. I've been looking. If you have any good places you know of to go and study and dive in. Thank you.
To study or to do retreat?
Both, all of it, any of it.
Well, the
Stravasti
study-
Abbey. Stravasti Abbey would be my suggestion.
Yeah, I've checked them out.
I'm not sure
looking
Kodo
at
would.
them.
I'm not sure that would suit Kodo though. I'm not sure, Lorna. It's a great
Yeah.
suggestion, but it wouldn't suit everybody. For me, anywhere you can do the basic program, maybe with some rigor, more than just like one night a week or something like this.
Oh yes. No, yeah. Rigor.
So exactly. So get into like a basic program, residential program. We offer things like that at Chen Rezig Institute. They offer it at Institute Lama Tsongkhapa, and they're the only real places that I've studied. But the rigor's there. So anywhere you can do a residential program, or even just do the 10-day programs. I want to go to Kopan because Light of the Path is coming.
Yeah.
Sorry for you guys, but great
Yeah.
for me, because it's coming to Kopan and I want to get there desperately. So come to something like that, start at any of those things. Kodo, it combines retreat with study, but definitely intensify the study. The more we can learn about the Dharma, the more we can put it into practice and know what to meditate on. Okay, thank you. All right, let's have no, stop there, Robbie. Let's just go and do the dedication prayers. And I should be able to, what do I do here? I'll just get my little screen share. Okay, so if we can recite together the dedication prayers, if you like, pulling all this wonderful, wonderful, wonderful merit of discussing Dharma, listening to the Dharma and so forth. So beautiful, so precious. Adding all these wonderful seeds, generating love and compassion and kindness, developing the good heart. Due to this merit, may I soon attain the enlightened state of a Guru Buddha, that I may be able to liberate all sentient beings from their sufferings. May the precious body-mind not yet born arise and grow. May that born have no decline, but increase forevermore. And then long life prayers for His Holiness and Rinpoche. Incomparably kind and supreme Tenzin Gyatso, the wish-granting, wish-fulfilling jewel, source of every single benefit and happiness in this world, may you have a long life and all your holy wishes be spontaneously fulfilled. And then lastly, you who uphold the subduer's moral way, who serve as a bountiful bearer of all, sustaining, preserving, and spreading Manjunath's victorious doctrine, who masterfully accomplishes magnificent prayers, honoring the three sublime ones, Savior of myself and others, your disciples, please, please live long. Okay, thank you, everyone. I wish you a wonderful, wonderful week. And I hope we have the karma to meet again next Monday for me, Sunday for you guys.
Thank you, Venerable.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you.
Good night.